Welcome everyone to the Cuppa Coffee podcast with me, your host, Tom Dylan. This is being recorded live at our weekly online meeting and broadcast around the world. Today's topic is Cuppa Coffee, the Summer Mix 2024, live. Before we start, I'd like to say by way of a disclaimer that today is a wonderful discussion, but nothing said here constitutes financial advice, and you should always take professional advice before investing your hard-earned cash. There may be the odd unplanned swear word along the way as well. The format for today is that we're going to have multiple speakers, hence the mashup live type idea, and then we'll have questions as we go through. So the excitement is that we've got four speakers, and the topic we're going to speak about, as far as I can tell, are completely unrelated. So you're in for sort of bonanza of unrelated joy, much as you might be at a summer festival where you hear different musicians, but there's not musicians, it's property investing information. I'd say the summer festival sounds better, but this is what we've got, and I'm personally excited to hear it. So first up, we just decided the batting order pre-record, so we're going to have the lovely Julie Talbot to share something with us.
Hi there. So in the spirit of the summer festival, today I want to talk about, I want to ask a question actually. And the question is, what if you choose location freedom first whilst you grow in your property portfolio? So many people say to me that me and my family are living their dream life. So we live overseas, we travel, we have been expats for about 12 years, and we're in our third year now of traveling full time as a family. So throughout that time, so for the last 15 years, we've been growing our property portfolio in the UK, but whilst we've been outside of the UK. So many people say that they want to travel in the future. They want to travel more. This is something I hear people say regularly, that they want to travel more, or they say that we're living their dream life. So my question is, why could you not have location freedom first? Why could you not travel more now? Why do we think that we've got to wait to build financial freedom before we can enjoy location freedom? So what if you choose to travel more now and to go for location freedom now? Well, I find that many people think that it's just not possible or practical to have location freedom until you've actually, achieved your property goals, for example, or until you've built that portfolio. There's this sort of like premise, I suppose, that you get financial freedom first and then you get time freedom and location freedom, rather than having time and location freedom whilst you're working on location freedom. Like, why can't we do that? So something I always think about here is, we put man on the moon. Anything is possible. So when someone says it's not possible, thinks it's not possible, I'm always like, well, we put man on the moon. Like, we can do anything if we really set our mind to it. So for those people who've got the travel itch, who do want to travel more, there are many ways to live overseas and to be overseas and to travel more. And that could be as an expat, so living and working in a different country. It could be being a nomad, so traveling, staying in different places for a few weeks or a few months, or it could just be taking regular holidays every so many weeks. So I'm not going to delve into any of those today, but there's many models and many different ways of traveling more that you can choose whilst growing a UK portfolio. So irrespective of how you meet your need of traveling more, if you want to grow a property portfolio in the UK whilst you're outside of the UK, or whilst you're outside of the UK quite a lot, then you're going to need to figure out how to do all the things that you need to get done without you being there, right? Which means systemizing and outsourcing now or first, whereas if you're going for financial freedom first, then you do that first and systemize and outsource afterwards, right? Do it in 2 stages. But if you want location freedom first, if you don't want to be there doing everything, then you've got to find a way to get everything done without you being there. So a few watch outs, I suppose, if this is for you, if you do want to choose location freedom first, then choosing location freedom does require a change in pace, because you're going to be somewhere else either most of the time or a lot of the time, and you need to enjoy that place. So I find if you choose location freedom first, then you're probably going to end up choosing more time freedom as well, because you're going to be somewhere where you want to be. So that's just a bit of a watch out, I suppose. Watch out on the other side, if you do choose financial freedom and to be focused on that and to be putting off your travel more until a point in the future, what's going to be your trigger to actually doing it? Is there a risk that you won't actually do it? That would be my concern about putting something off until the future. If you do choose to go for location freedom first, then you may go slower. You might not make as much progress as quickly as you could if you're in the UK, and you might sort of find that frustrating. But what I'll say to that is, if you're running your business from a beach or a mountaintop, living the life that you want to live now, then so what if you go a bit slower? You're living the life you want to live now. And something else I think is a watch out is people often, I think I've made certain assumptions about how much it costs to either live overseas or to have a nomadic lifestyle, or even go on holiday frequently. But traveling doesn't have to be expensive. And especially if you're traveling for long periods, you can book accommodations and through Airbnb for a month or more for way more than the cost of rent of somewhere in the UK. And depending on where you are, we've had one of my children's favourite meals has been 20p for a freshly made roasted bread and some something to go with it. So that's extreme, but life doesn't have to be expensive just because you're traveling a lot. So if you want to grow your UK property portfolio, and then whilst you're living outside the UK, then that's choosing to have location freedom first. So I've got 5 steps here on how you can do that that I've found helpful to follow so that you can do that. So step 1 is be clear on what it is you're doing. And so what it is you're doing in property, and also how you want to be living, what's the life model that you want. So have a roadmap really of that and be clear on it. Second step is then, once you know what it is you actually want to be doing, like once you know what the plan is, then you can get specific and figure out how you're going to do the things that you need to do in your property business so that it enables you to live in that life model, right? Maybe you'll outsource, maybe you'll do it in a house, there's all sorts of different options to get things done, but it's a case of figuring it out. And then moving to do, right? Massive imperfect action, do the thing, implement. And then it's the 4th step is see what works, right? Some things aren't going to have worked. You're going to have to tweak, make changes, maybe make staff changes or supply changes, but just look at what's worked, look at what hasn't, make changes. And then step 5 is repeat, because we're growing portfolios. We're not just buying one house, we're doing, multiple, irrespective of the pace or the speed that we're going at. So the 5 steps are: be clear on what it is you're doing in property and how it is you want to live. So have the plan. Part 2 is then figure out how you need to set up your property business to be able to deliver what you want in property and live the life you want to live. Step 3 is just do it and put it in place, implement. Step 4 is tweak, make changes so that it works better. And then step 5, repeat. So what if you can grow your property portfolio from anywhere in the world? Well, then you've got location freedom. And then you can experience the life that you want to be living now whilst you're growing your property business, rather than waiting to travel and risking not doing it.
If you've been enjoying listening to me harping on and you're sick of property taking longer than you expected, then I've got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that making money from property investing nearly always takes longer than you think. The good news is that means you're in great company. The other good news is that that's me and business partner Chris, have helped lots of people achieve more in property than they ever thought possible in less time than they ever thought possible. So, if you want to stop dreaming and start being held accountable for achieving what you know you can, then check out our best-in-class property mentoring at bestpropertymentoring.com. Now, back to the show. That's right. One way that we did it and other people can, of course, do it as well, was we essentially went traveling around Europe for 18 months, doing a month here and a month there. And I'm not saying everyone has to do that. You can just set out on a boat and off you go, get over the Atlantic and see how you get on. But we decided to go and travel into do a month in a few different places where to sort of test the water and make sure, you know, is everything fine or does everything fall down? And then by doing that, that gave us confidence that, yeah, actually this is fine. And so we then we you know, then started to travel a bit further afield. So that went well for us. Okay, great. Great stuff, Julie. Thanks very much for that share. Let's move on to a completely unrelated note. The lovely friend of Cuppa, Robin Dunn, who I think's possibly got a case study for us. Last time I checked, how are you, Robin?
I'm very good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, very well. What have you got for us today?
I also must apologise. I'm on a mobile connection, basically, as well, and the bandwidth's not great. So hopefully mine's at least as good as Julie's connection was previously. So I wanted to talk about the new Renters' Rights Bill, and this was formerly called by the Conservative as the what, Tom?
This sounds like a quiz question. Julie?
Uh,
No idea.
so
What was it? What was it previously called?
So the Conservatives had it, and the reason I asked you is it slipped my memory. It was called the Renters Reform Act, I think it was called, and
Yeah.
now the Labour has renamed it. So this bill has already had its second reading and is projected to sort of come into law autumn this year. We still don't know exactly what's in it, but it's certainly going to be affecting landlords. So I wanted to talk about sort of different strategies people have right now and how it may affect them, and why I believe HMOs are now the best strategy, sort of moving forward, both from a risk point of view, but also sort of an ease of getting into. So the renters' right is basically trying to reform the housing market yet again. What they're actually saying on the Renters' Right Act is that they're trying to bring in rent caps. Now, in my experience, anywhere this has happened, Paris, whatever, there's Scotland had a 52% drop in landlords when that came in. Rent caps came in Scotland, so I think that's a really bad idea. They're also going to be restricting you selling your property, and then maybe having to sell it to the actual tenant at a discount. The way they're expressing it at the moment is not market rate, but at a reasonable price. So what does that mean? So that hasn't been clarified yet. So it'd be the same as sort of right to buy, but with your asset, basically, people being able to rent it for years and then maybe buy it off you at a discount. They're then talking about discrimination. Well, okay, I understand discrimination. We shouldn't really discriminate between different people and different people's circumstances. But if we're having to make financial decisions, we need to do that on all the information that's available. So if you've got tenants on benefit, you can't discriminate against them. If you've got people that have got disabilities and things, you can't discriminate them. If you've got people who've got pets, they've now got a right to move their pets into the property as well. So there's a lot of problems there that could be for landlords. They're also providing councils with strengthened powers, although they've not been that specific about what they're doing with that. Now, this was originally sort of balanced with, expedited courts for, getting rid of problem tenants, because generally there are some. I don't see any difference on the Section 21 ban, which is basically what the media have called no fault evictions. Generally speaking, if you've got a tenant that's paying rent on time, there's not a problem, then that's what you want as a landlord. You only really get rid of tenants that are a problem. And Section 21 is one of those methods that you can use. I wouldn't call it a no fault eviction because it's rarely issued in a no fault scenario. They're also persistent late payers. So you used to be able to take action on that. They were drawing the rights for that. So there's a whole new load of things coming in. And if you're a buy-to-let landlord, you're already on sort of wispy thin sort of margins, increased regulation and everything else. So the other area that people have been looking into and doing well in is serviced apartments. This is where you get a flat or a house and you rent it out much like a hotel on a nightly basis, inclusive with services. So it could be basic things like cleaning and laundry, but it could be a lot more sophisticated and elaborate. What they're looking at doing there is bringing a new planning class, C5, and you would have to ask permission through planning to move your property from a regular house that perhaps you rent to a tenant into a serviced apartment. Now, along with that, there may be some permitted development rights, which the councils obviously would control whether you would be able to do that under PD or not. But clearly, if you've got a touristy area, then it's likely that the councils will exercise their rights there as well. They're also talking about bringing a tourist registration scheme in, and this is a scheme that you pay for, and I think this scheme is designed to sort of provide extra safety sort of checking on sites and things. So obviously it'll have a cost to it, and maybe increase costs of actually running a service accommodation class property. And I think most of that would be to do with things like fire eggs and things. So I'm not sort of against that. But they're also, councils also bringing in the tourist tax, and Bournemouth Council's the first one to do this. You know, £7 per head per night. No, sorry, not £7, it's £2. And you're expected to sort of collect that as well. So there's difficulties with the service apartment type model, with new regulations coming in, new costs coming in. They're also allowing councils to double council tax on service apartments compared with, you know, a like equivalent. So again, there's some volatility there in that market, and we also have, I wouldn't say market saturation, but all the low-hanging fruit's gone there. So, you know, service apartment isn't the game it used to be. So what are we left with in terms of property that you can produce a good profit on? HMOs. So a reason that this is the best strategy is, firstly, planning. You can build up to a 6-bed HMO, so you can convert a house into a 6-bed HMO without any planning at all. You don't need to ask for planning. There's a prior approvals notice and you can do that. You can use that in conjunction with your permitted development rights. So you can do your loft extensions and things like that, and then do your HMO. And you can get quite a lot out of that from a small HMO, and small HMO classes up to 6 rooms. The other things like tenants. So the average tenancy, according to spare rooms, about 9 months for an HMO. I mean, thankfully ours are a lot longer, but it's because it's multi-tenanted, you're not going to have the problem with, you know, people bringing dogs in and things like that, because obviously that sort of environment is not suitable for it. And also you're not going to have to sort of sell your property to a tenant at a discount, you know, if you want to actually get rid of the property, because you'll have multiple tenants. So who buys it? So I see that as a way of avoiding that. And also a way of avoiding this hardship test for you to, so the Labour have got this idea of a hardship test. So if you sell your property, is that going to put the tenant in more hardship than you? So all the details are not out on that in detail. It's not law yet, but it is at second bill right, and it will be law later this year. So don't have all the details on that. So a lot of the risks that are introduced by the new tenant renters right bill are actually mitigated with HMOs just by the model of HMOs. And one of the biggest risks we have in development in properties is planning. So with HMOs, you don't need planning. So that is essentially all I have for you today. Happy to answer any questions on HMOs or anything else property related. I will put a link in the Cuppa WhatsApp group. If you'd like to learn more about HMO training, I do free HMO training. It's online, 1 hour a week. We also have a number of site visits coming up. Again, it's all free. I'll put the link in the Cuppa WhatsApp group, and you can simply book yourselves on. So that's all I have now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you
So
very much,
I don't know
Robin.
how I was on timing there, because every time you stopped talking, everything disappeared visually
There.
wise. So I
Technology, eh?
think I was
No,
around about 7-8 minutes, was I?
you were pretty good. You were pretty much bang on. So it's we're all good. We've got time for me and other Julie. So happy days.
Okay.
But we'll keep questions quick fire. Well, first of all, thanks. Presentation was great there. So one line summary would be, in your view, opinion alert.
Yeah.
Based on this rights, well, the bill rather, that's going through second reading. So fairly serious job. I might come in not that far in the future. HMOs look like potentially a good bet or better bet based on the risks or potential costs of this bill that might affect other strategies more than it affects the HMO strategy. That's broadly it.
It's easy getting used to it, into it. You can do an HMO refurb without a lot of construction experience, and a lot of the risks that the renters renters' rights bill adds to it are mitigated just purely because it's that sort of property. It's a multi-let.
Understood. Well, excellent stuff. Really appreciate that. Renters' rights bill, it's called now. It used to be renters reform bill.
Yeah.
So I'm interested. Obviously, give that a Google and see what comes back to screw yourself up, as Robin's clearly done. Lovely stuff. We'll go on to other Julie. In this case, Julie Whitmore, who's kind of speaks to us a few weeks ago, and he's back on with something equally exciting. Hello, Julie.
Hi, Tom. Just to say, I'm not sure how long this take. It might be a bit under, but I'll give it a shot anyway. Okay.
It'll be perfect.
So I'm going to talk to you today about my passion for energetic house dowsing. I am actually a trained dowser. Now you'll all go, what does that mean? Well, if I just show you something that most people understand about dowsing, these are dowsing rods, okay? And historically, these were associated with finding and divining water, but there's actually a lot more to dowsing than actually meets the eye. So, I mean, I like to show this to people. The easiest way to explain this is you can walk into a house and you get a feel. You might get a good feel, or you might go, there's something not quite right. In the same way that you meet people, when you meet people and you go, there was something not quite right there. That's because everything is about energy. We can't see it, we can't touch it, but it's there and it affects a lot of things. And there was a very famous scientific experiment conducted by a guy called Dr. Masaru Emoto, who did an experiment with water, showing that water can be affected by words and emotions. So if water can be affected, everything can be affected. And, we probably all know that, our current King Charles, has a passion for talking to his plants, right? So, it's a bit woo-woo for some people, but I've got a real passion for this. And I got into this a long time ago when we had what I called a problem property, and it was just one thing after another that kept happening. It was just a really, really unlucky house, and I thought, what's going on here? There's something more to meet the eye. So I got into house dowsing, and lo and behold, when I actually did the charts on it, there was some toxic lines running through the property. There was lots of other things, and once I dealt with those, some of the issues we're having in the property actually started to pick up. So how does this work? So when I douse something, I actually do it from a floor plan. So clients will send me a floor plan, and the reason I don't do it in the property is twofold. Is because sometimes if you're trying to trace a line, you can be falling over furniture, you can't walk through walls, but it can actually go through the centre of the property. And also the same for land. I can douse land, and land is more about the geomancy of the land, which can affect, if particularly somebody like Robin's developing, it can cause you issues if you've got issues with ley lines or things like that. Ley lines are quite famous. So I do it remotely because I can't walk through walls to trace lines. And also, if there's anything in there that's quite negative, it's better if I'm away from the situation whilst I'm dowsing, because there's two sides really to what I do. There's the geomancy side, which is things that are connected to the earth energy that affect the property. And then on the other side, you can have things that are more related from people and emotions. Now, a lot of people think about spirits and haunting and all that sort of stuff, but there's a lot more to it. I've known properties where people, there's been a repeat pattern of divorce, people that have lived in the house, and that does leave a negative residue. So it's about clearing those residues. So I'll take a floor plan, and it actually takes me a couple of hours to do this, because I go through something like a 30-point plan on a list, and I check to see how that house is affected by all those things that could possibly exist. I mean, it's things like ley lines, toxic lines, water spirals, emotional energy from conflict is a really big common one. You can get attachments, particularly people that have been in a depressive state can generate a lot of negative energy, and that can attach to things. The other interesting one as well is if you are buying antiques or things like that, if you're buying items, all items will have an energy. So particularly older items, just be aware that you can be bringing certain energies into a property that you might not be aware of. So that's quite a common one as well. You know, there are other things where you can have spirit lines, you can have place of memory lines. So if something's been built on something, you will get the energy from what it's been built on. And I once lived in a brand new build, and there was something about the house. I mean, it was beautiful, it was all new, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. But then it was actually built on, I think it was an old coal mine, and there was things about the land that weren't that clean. So the energy of that was coming through to the property. So lots of things can affect this. So I know you can't see this on the video, but that's a very sort of rough diagram of what I do. I take a you know, a house layout, and I plot everything, and then find out what the problem is, and then I have to deal with that, and I can clear with that. Sometimes you can't completely clear things, but what you do, you change them from a negative to a positive, so it has a different sort of influence. And then sometimes you need to keep on top of that every 6 months. And I have known situations where you know, people in certain properties or rooms in properties, there has been a pattern of ill health. This happened to me recently. A client asked me to douse his business premises and also his home premises. And when I did the home premises, there was a particular bedroom where there was something running right through the middle, and he hadn't told me what the problem was. And when I'd done the dowsing, and I said to him, okay, this particular bedroom, have you had any issues where people staying in that bedroom have developed any health problems? And he said, absolutely. He says, both the previous occupants of that particular bedroom had suffered from ongoing health problems. So this stuff can affect you, and you don't realize how it's affecting you. So, you know, if you're not sure something doesn't feel right, then it's worth getting, you know, getting a property doused. And as I said, most people will go, well, you know, places are haunted, and depending on the level of what you may find, there's certain things I can deal with. If we're going down a really benevolent route, then there are different ways of dealing with that one. But I also use sage, because I clear my own house of energy, because our energy gets stagnant, it gets stuck in corners and all that sort of stuff. I also use salt in bowls with lemon, and I'll put it by doors to try and clear things. And I had another client who was having problems with a flat in the family, and I said, look, give me the floor plan, let me have a look at it. And I kept getting something when I doused about something about the fabric of the building, so how the building was constructed. And I said, look, when you bought this, or when it was renovated, did you bring the materials from another property, from another place? And she said, no. She said, but there was once a fire in the building. And what was happening was that the fire, you know, the negativity of the fire was actually sitting in the fabric of the building, and that was affecting what was going on. So yeah, there can be lots of things that can, you know, that can impact this. And as I said, not everybody's cup of tea. You know, I do get that. You know, it's not for everybody, but you know, sometimes people don't understand what they can't see. It's that sort of situation, but it can be really, really really powerful stuff. Sometimes you'll hear of it called sick building syndrome, which is what happened to the property that we had. And then once they cleared it, you know, some of the problems disappeared. So, you know, if you've got something that you can't explain, or something just doesn't feel right in a house, it might be more going on than you actually think. So, you know, just come and have a chat with me, folks, and let's see what we can do. But yeah, really, really powerful stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. Going back to basics then, so I've tried to understand. I'll try and understand it. So, dowsing property dowsing is a way of lots of things, I imagine, but improving the energy or energy flow in a property to improve outcomes for that property. Is that broadly right? Am I in the right area?
Absolutely. And this is a pendulum. So this is
All right.
what I use to actually douse the floor plans. And I can ask it to tell me what's there. I can ask it to tell me the polarity of something. I can ask it to tell me the percentages on stuff. So you're absolutely spot on, Tom. It's about clearing the energies of a building or a piece of land.
What are ley lines? You mentioned those.
Ley lines are sort of, they're called cosmic earth lines, yeah. That run underground, and you can't see them, but they are particularly powerful. And they're part of the earth grid, if you like. Now, the one of the most famous ones is there's one that runs from Cornwall, and it runs through Glastonbury. More local to us, we've actually got one that runs through Chester. So, you know, depending on the line itself, you know, and the energy it's got, they can be very, very powerful. They can be very broad, they can be very long, or they can be quite short. So if it's negative, we just try and switch it to something that's a bit more positive to change the energy in it.
Chester's nice. I'm not being facetious when I say, does that mean that maybe part of the reason is because it's got a nice ley line, or am I oversimplifying something here?
Well, no, because it runs from Chester Cathedral through Melpats and through to Whitchurch. So it's not really anything to do with the ley line. I think it's just
That's where it happens to go.
Coincidental, Tom. Yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And then you mentioned the memory line as well. Is that the same thing, or is that different thing?
Place of memory. So if you've had, let's say, a new build is built on a piece of ground, the ground might have had a previous purpose. It could have had, let's say, a church. It could have had a hospital. It could have had a garage. It could have had something else on there, and that memory of that previous building can actually sit in the land itself. And can, as I said, that the house I had was picking up place of memory from the land, from the previous purpose. So they can all have different impacts.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a property that had contaminated land. I think it was the previous use from maybe 100 years previously. It was something like a dump, you know, a tip sort of thing. So all kinds of stuff in there, metals, this, that, and the other. And so we had to pay a fair bit of money, 10, 20 grand, I can't remember exactly, to move something like 10 tons of soil out of there and then bring 10 tons of fresh soil in. If people are facing a contaminated land site, is that more likely to be somewhere that's going to have problems with energy or this kind of thing? Or
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, obviously, you have to clear away the problem, but the energy from that could still reside. So you know, it would be beneficial to clear that and make that more positive.
Yeah. And then probably, well, just to round things out, you may, like, obviously you're the expert here, so if anyone's interested or feels they've got some, you know, would like to speak to Julie, then obviously, as always, we'll put contact details with the podcast episode. But for those who are thinking, well, okay, but what quick wins can I do? You mentioned a couple of things that you do with sage and, did I get it right? Salted bowls with some lemon in.
Yes, yeah. To just clear that, I mean, that's different to finding the energy, but if I feel that things are a bit stagnant, I'll go around the rooms with it's white sage, and you burn it, and you'll see a lot of mediums and things using this, or you know, it's used to clear energy, because energy lingers in corners and round doors. The other thing I do is sometimes I'll put table salt into a small bowl, and I'll put lemons in, because that sucks the energy out the atmosphere as well. So if I just want to refresh things, I do that quite regularly. I'll put it by the front door or the back door, you know, where energy can come into a property. And I'll do that if I think things just need a little bit of a bit like a spring clean, if you like, Tom.
Sure. It sounds good. I mean, say what you like about the rest of it, but lemon smells nice anyways. You're on a winner,
Absolutely.
whichever way it goes, right? Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for that, Julie. I really appreciate that share, and your interest in it's obvious. And so, yeah, if anyone's interested, obviously get in touch with Julie. I thought I'd round things out. I've got a few minutes, so that's good. A change of pace, for better or for worse, you decide. Was I thought I'd talk briefly about things I'd like to tell my younger self. Now, this is probably aimed more at the beginners amongst us, but then I think, you know, more experienced heads might get something from it as well, because it's always good to reconnect with this stuff, I think. So let me crack on. The first thing I had to tell my younger self, and by younger, but in my case, I'm 44 now, and I started to property when I was 31. But it probably would be equally good advice whether you're in property or not, or bad advice, you decide. But it's the advice I would give is try not to worry so much. I'm not much of a worrier. I'm really not, and I think that probably most people tell me I come across as pretty chilled out, which is true. But you only get to do this once, and I do worry. You know, human being, so do worry about things. I know some people worry a lot more than me. But so whether you become a billionaire doing this or doing whatever you're doing, or you end up in jail or dead, well, enjoy the ride, because you know, the ride's really what it's all about, not all you've got at the end. I thought to myself, I can picture my younger self. And he goes, my younger self. I need like a hologram at this point of my younger self going, yeah, that's good, that, Tom, but not very actionable, is it? Because not worrying is really not easily actionable advice. So I thought, well, here's one that is easily actionable, which is spend more money more quickly on learning and mentoring. I spent some money at reasonable speed on learning and mentoring when I started, but I'd spend more, and I'd spend more aggressively to spend as much time as possible with the best people in the business as quickly as I could. It's a cliche that money you invest in yourself, you get back 10 or 100 times over, but I think it's a cliche for a reason. The danger with the one I just said is that you end up either spending 30 or 40 grand or more with money you haven't got on credit cards, and learn too much in a short space of time, i.e. there's only so much you can fit into your head in a useful way. So and also, Tom said you should spend more on mentoring and on learning, on courses and programs and things. So I've just spent loads of money. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean you can not be careful and not be picky about what you're going to learn. You've still got to do that, because otherwise you end up becoming a master of everything, or a jack of all trades and a master of none. I should probably be an easy way to say that. And there's too much information, so you lose the focus of what you're trying to do. So you still need to be careful. Second one that's with my younger self ringing in my ear saying that the first one wasn't very actionable. I'll do two actionable ones in a row. So the first actionable one there was to learn more and learn harder when you're first starting out. The second one that's hopefully very actionable is read. That one sounds a bit silly, I think, especially to people who've like read their entire lives. But I know a lot of people, and I'm one of them, who came through university. And by the way, you know, I realize previous generations, or you know, some people also came through university. I'm not saying I was the first person through university, but my generation and future ones came through and lost the love of reading. I spent 3 years reading books I didn't really want to read, and didn't want to read anything once I graduated. So if that's you, or indeed my younger self, then start reading now and realize that there's different ways of reading. So most of my reading I do now is on Audible, when I'm driving or on the train or whatever, which is, you know, audiobooks, or Blinkist, which is one where where books are condensed down into 15 minutes max, I think it is. And again, they've got audio versions on that now, so you can get a broad brush on everything from Catcher in the Rye to Plato's Republic in 15 minutes on a train ride. Sure, you haven't read every word, but you know the broad principles that's been talking about. That makes you a better dinner party guest, but b kind of maybe sparks your interest in other things. You don't need to be reading property books all day every day, because that's a bit boring. But getting your love for reading back is, like with mentoring and other stuff, will pay you back 100 times in the long run. And like all compound interest or compounding things like that, the earlier you can start with that, the better. To boil all that down to simple terms about the reading, is I've met very few people who I've been jealous of, which is always me a good marker that they've done something well, because I'm usually jealous of something that they've achieved or something that they have in their character. So I've met very few people that I'm either jealous of or who have achieved a lot of success who don't read a lot. Or in simple terms, most people who I meet or are jealous of or are successful read and read quite a lot. There's a great stat, which some of you might already know. If not, feel free to look it up, which is like what the average person reads, which is about 4 minutes a day or something, versus the average CEO usually reads, I think it's more than a book a week. Next bit of advice for my younger self, and we're cantering towards the finish here, is trust your gut. But realize that when you're starting out, so when you first get started, after all, I'm speaking to my younger self, is use other people to test and improve your gut. Because when you start off, your gut's rubbish, because you don't know what you're doing. But you know what feels right and what feels wrong, and who feels good to work with and not, and whether a deal feels good or not. But test that for the first 6 months, a year, and longer if you're doing different strategies. But trust it nonetheless, because it's often all you've got. And if you have to make quick decisions, which often you are, then it's your best guide. The times I've made the biggest mistakes and lost the most money is when I've failed to do that. I thought I'd finish with my last one is from one of my favorite pieces of source material about life advice, which is a song called Wear Sunscreen, which was written by a lady, a professor. She was sick of listening to people giving these graduation speeches, and so she, with all these big ideas about follow your passion and this, that, and the other, so she wrote this thing, which I think was published in big American newspaper, maybe the New York Times, and then a music producer thought it was brilliant and did a song called Wear Sunscreen, which if you look it up, you'll probably have heard before. And I've tried to follow the entire songs with life advice for my adult life, and it's served me well so far. The line I've gone for out of there, but you can choose more or less all of them, is do one thing every day that scares you. And I think that's a great bit of advice, because thinking about the work side, although personal side works as well, which is on the work side, if you do that, it means you're stretching yourself, and you're stretching yourself usually in a way that's manageable. There's that idea that you've got your comfort zone, then your stretch zone, which is the good bit where you get bigger, and then you've got your terrified, I don't know what it's called, but it's not good, where you stretch yourself too far and then you just break down into a puddle of nerves or something. So by doing one thing every day that scares you rather than 48, I think that's a good balance to try and grow and to be the best you can be. Right, there we go. That's that. And between us, weirdly, we've managed to nail the timing, so I'm delighted about that. I'm going to check the chat to make sure I'm not missing any questions. No, it's Isu having a chat with Julie about various property, what's the word, energy problems that they've been having. So that's good to know. I'd like to thank everyone for. I don't think my bit requires questions, and I can't ask myself questions. Hey Tom, I'd like to ask a question about your thing. So I think we'll leave it there. Yeah, fantastic stuff, Tom. Thank you very much. Who's that? Someone gets a gold star. Someone's giving me positive feedback in the chat. Fit for life. Thank you very much to Millie. Thanks very much for everyone who's listening, watching. Really appreciate you taking the time. Everyone who's attended today. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and catch you in the next one.